one would notice her. She then changed her appearance back to normal, before going back to Kenny's apartment, taking a different route from the way she took before. That would make it harder for the police to trace her steps. By the time she got back to Kenny's residence, it was already 1 o'clock a.m. Kenny didn't go to pick Roberta up because she insisted that he should stay at home and not go anywhere because he was in more danger than she was. When Roberta reached his front door, she called him before knocking in order to not scare him. The moment Kenny received her call, he was excited. Without delay, he ran to open the door, and Roberta walked in. Kenny closed the door behind them, then asked Roberta at once, "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," she replied with a smile. "Really?" Kenny asked worriedly, looking her over to make sure she didn't have any cuts or bruises. "I'm really fine. I'm just a little thirsty," answered Roberta. "Oh, let me pour you a glass of water," offered Kenny. Then he went to pour water for her, and he also brought her some fruit. "How did it all go?" he asked, after confirming that Roberta was indeed fine. "Hector confessed, but he told me he isn't the mastermind," reported Roberta. "What? He isn't the mastermind? Then who is?" asked Kenny with a frown. "He said it was a member of the Warren family," shrugged Roberta. Kenny's frown deepened. Roberta continued. "He claimed that a man stopped him in the parking lot of his house the other day. The man got in his car and used coercion and bribery to convince him to scheme against you. Hector said he was unwilling to do it at first because he didn't want to get in trouble, but the man claimed to be a member of the Warren family, so Hector yielded in the end. I think it's possible that the mastermind is someone else, but I'm not sure whether it's the Warren family. After all, they might have been sane. Anyway, we need to investigate further to find out who the real mastermind is." "You're right. I also believe that Hector carried out someone else's order, but I can't be sure whether it was truly a member of the Warren family. You would think that if it was someone from the Warren family, they wouldn't tell Hector who they are. But maybe they were too confident and believed that he would keep it a secret," Kenny pointed out. "Well, what should we do next? Hector doesn't have a way to contact the man. We have no leads," sighed Roberta. "Since we know where they met, we can check the surveillance cameras in that area. Henry can help us with that. He's good at hacking. He can hack into the surveillance cameras with his own computer," said Kenny. However, it was too late at night right now, so he wouldn't bother Henry with it until the next day. "Oh, how's Hector now?" Kenny added. "I threatened him and told him that I arranged for someone to watch him. If he even tries to take one step out of his home, he'll be killed. I bet he won't dare to leave," Roberta said, then continued. "I think your people can keep us updated on his information if he really leaves. If no accidents happen, tomorrow we can call the police. I recorded his confession with a wireless pinhole camera. That can be our evidence." "Thank you so much for your help with this," Kenny said to Roberta sincerely. "You don't need to thank me. I'm happy to help," Roberta assured him. "All right, get some sleep now. I'll deal with the video of his confession," said Kenny. He didn't want Roberta to be too tired. "All right," she agreed, and then Kenny led her to the master bedroom. "Why did you take me to the master bedroom? I can sleep in the guest room," protested Roberta, feeling a little nervous. She wondered if Kenny wanted to sleep with her tonight. They just got together, so she wasn't ready to take the next step with him yet. Kenny didn't notice Roberta's embarrassment, but he wouldn't do anything inappropriate to her. "It's fine. I'll sleep in the guest room," he responded. "All right," Roberta agreed. After accommodating Roberta, Kenny went back to the living room. He picked up the micro camera airport now? Asked Kenny. Yes, I'm about halfway there, confirmed Carlos, sounding a little gloomy once again. Although he trusted that Ariana could protect him well, he was afraid the situation would drag the Ortiz family into more serious trouble. Not only he and Carlotta were in trouble, the whole Ortiz family was facing a crisis. Be careful, said Kenny. That was all he could say. Sure, I will, and you be careful as well, repeated Carlos. After they finished the call, Roberta suggested, why don't you turn to Ariana for help? Doesn't she have a technology company? I bet there must be hackers in her company. Oh, good idea. Let me ask her about it, agreed Kenny. Then immediately called Ariana. He didn't have time to think about whether it was a good idea, because it was too important. Although it was his own business, it could become the Ortiz family's problem if he didn't handle it well. Before long, Ariana picked up his call, and then Kenny explained the situation to her. All right, I'll order someone to do an investigation right away. I'll send you a phone number after hanging up. If you need any extra help from a hacker, call him. I'll tell him to contact you once he finds anything, said Ariana. Because she was about to take a 12-hour flight to Paris, she wouldn't be available to help Kenny with it later, so she directly gave him Kay's number. As for Kenny's safety, Ariana wasn't worried, because Roberta was with him. Great. Thank you so much, Ariana. Kenny thanked her sincerely. He finally realized who the good people were when he was in trouble. He used to hold hostility against Ariana, but now he really regretted that. We're a family. You don't need to thank me. All right, I'm in the subway now. I can't talk for long. Be careful, instructed Ariana. Kenny felt guiltier when Ariana said they were a family, and he felt deeply touched too. All right, you should also take good care of yourself, he replied. After hanging up, Ariana sent Kenny Kay's phone number. Kenny was a little upset after his call with Ariana. Roberta had overheard their conversation, but she didn't understand why Kenny was so upset, because she didn't know that he used to think badly of Ariana. She didn't want to gossip about it, but she worried about Kenny, so she asked, are you all right? Kenny understood that Roberta could sense that something was wrong, so he explained, I just feel guilty for my hatred towards Ariana and Henry in the past. They're so kind to me. Roberta nodded in understanding, but she didn't think it was a big deal. It was unavoidable that family members would compete with each other, so she figured that Kenny used to be jealous of Henry, and that was why he had hard feelings towards him and Ariana. The moment Kenny finished explaining that, he realized that Roberta might think less of him for admitting it, so he asked nervously, do you still think I'm a good person? Roberta beamed and replied, why wouldn't I? It's unavoidable for family members to have conflicts, especially when you're always compared to one another. The important thing is, you're getting along well now. Right, I was immature in the past, so I was jealous of Henry because he's so outstanding. But now I'm more mature and stable, and we're getting closer, said Kenny. He didn't hide that he used to be very jealous of Henry because of his achievements. Well, some of my family members have had hard feelings towards me, especially my Aunt Beatrice. She doesn't care about my happiness, and she even tried to set me up with her terrible nephew, Simon. At first, my parents didn't know how awful he was, and asked me to spend some time with him, but they learned about what a jerk he was, and got mad at my Aunt Beatrice, chuckled Roberta. She wasn't complaining, she simply wanted to distract Kenny. She didn't want him to be in a bad mood. Oh, what's your attitude towards your Simon then? Kenny asked, squinting at Roberta as if he was jealous, but he actually wasn't displeased at all. Obviously, Roberta had no interest in that man. Seeing Kenny's dangerous look, Roberta didn't think he was mad. In fact, she wouldn't mind if he really was mad, because it meant he cared about her. I hate him. I even punched him a few times because he was getting too close to me, Roberta laughed. Upon thinking of Simon, she felt disgusted. You're the only man I care about. I have no interest in any other men. Well, I also care about my grandfather, or Roberta's grandfather to be precise, and her father and older brother. I'm not the real Roberta, but I treat her family as my own, since they treat me so well, she added. I have the same feeling as you. I also treat them as my family, agreed Kenny. He and Roberta were a couple now, so he took their relationship seriously. Although it was hard to say whether they would get married in the future, Roberta's family was still important to him because they were important to her. Roberta was touched and asked, "Are you serious? Do you mean maybe we'll become a family someday?" Kenny caressed Roberta's hair with a loving gaze. Then he confirmed with a smile, "Yeah, I mean it." About half an hour later, Kay had the result of the investigation and contacted Kenny. From the surveillance cameras, Kay found out the appearance and identity of the man who met with Hector. Although the man had contacted the Wharton family, he wasn't a member of the Wharton family, and they weren't close. Instead, he had a close relationship with the Connors family. Therefore, the real mastermind was highly likely to be the Connors family. Although the man said he was a member of the Wharton family, he must have been lying, trying to frame them. With that answer, Kenny called his father before his plane took off. At that moment, Carlos had already met Ariana outside the airport and had just gotten his boarding pass. When he saw Kenny's call, Carlos picked it up at once. After that, Kenny shared the result with him. Carlos wasn't surprised when he heard that the mastermind wasn't the Wharton family, and was instead the Connors family. After all, they were both suspects from the beginning. Since they knew it was the Connors family now, they would pay special attention to them from now on. Without delay, Kenny informed Master Ortiz about it, since the Ortiz family had a right to know who was scheming against them. At this time, only Master Ortiz and Ava were at the Ortiz family's house. Ava had come to see Master Ortiz early in the morning. Master Ortiz wasn't surprised when he heard the result. In fact, he thought it was more reasonable for the mastermind to be the Connors family. Although they didn't have evidence to prove it yet, it was highly likely to be the truth, given what they found out. Right, the Connors family, they're always troublesome, muttered Master Ortiz with displeasure. Why don't we cause them some trouble to retaliate? Ava suggested, squinting dangerously. How? Master Ortiz asked. We can cause Master Connors to become bedridden, or we could cause his son to get in a car accident and get likely injured. We could also leave some illegal stuff in the Connors family's residence and anonymously report it to the police. As long as they're in a mess as well, they won't have time and energy to scheme against the Ortiz family, said Ava. But it's not easy to do any of that without being exposed, Master Ortiz pointed out. He supported Ava's plans. Although they sounded cruel, the Connors family was their enemy. They had no mercy for their enemies. However, he didn't want to get caught by the police for scheming against them. Have you forgotten what I can do? I can easily do all of those things without being noticed, boasted Ava. Hearing that, Master Ortiz suddenly remembered that Ava had superpowers. All right, you can go deal with it, but be careful, cautioned Master Ortiz. He was furious at the Connors family, so he didn't care what methods Ava used to pay them back. I will, said Ava, smiling devilishly. After Kenny gave Master Ortiz a call, he went with Roberta to the police station. He told the police that someone sent him a USB flash disk anonymously, which contained a video of Hector admitting that he ordered the truck driver to knock into his car. In addition, Hector also said in the video that it was an order from the Wharton family. Kenny didn't investigation would be affected, so they needed to collect evidence to prove that they were innocent. Once the Wharton family heard about the news, Master Wharton asked his family members whether the scheme had anything to do with them. Because none of them got along with the Ortiz family, it was possible that one of them gave the order. However, all the other family members swore that they weren't involved, so Master Wharton believed them. In that case, the Wharton family must have been framed. They didn't think that Hector was lying. Rather, they suspected his family. Although they were enemies, they knew the Ortiz family never bothered to play dirty tricks. As a result, there must be someone who deliberately stirred things up between the Ortiz family and the Wharton family. But who could it be? In addition to the Connors family and the Ford family, there were several family. Once we find out, we must pay them members to be careful, so they wouldn't be trapped this time. The Connors family didn't know they were under suspicion. They were still waiting to see the Ortiz family get in trouble. They knew the Ortiz family would be suspicious of them. After all, the Ortiz family weren't idiots, and they wouldn't believe Hector's words without conducting an investigation of their own. But they were confident that there was no solid evidence against them. However, they had no idea that they were already in danger. After a 12-hour flight, Ariana and the others finally arrived in Paris, France. When they got out of the plane, someone from the secretary of the diplomatic ambassador to France came to pick them up. This time, not only Ariana and Zella, but 6 others came with Carlos, including 2 bodyguards, a secretary, a representative of the police, an interpreter, and a lawyer. Ariana and Zella also served as Carlos's bodyguards. After all, Carlos was a very important figure, and he came to deal with something special, so it was very normal that a team would accompany him. After leaving the airport, they headed straight to the embassy. They needed to rest and learn more about the specific situation before meeting with the senior official who was detaining Carlotta. Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, Ava was ready to attack Master Connor's oldest son, Randy, right as he left from work. She waited in a restaurant that was along the road that Randy's chauffeur drove him down every time he went home. For convenience, she sat by a window that could be opened. When Randy's car drove past, Ava summoned up her magical energy to hit the rear window, right where Randy was sitting. When the magical energy hit the window, the glass immediately exploded, shattering into pieces, which flew into the air and cut Randy all over. Because of the sudden shock, the chauffeur was distracted and slammed on the gas instead of the brake, causing the car to lurch forward violently and hit the vehicle in front of them, which happened to be a big truck. When they hit the truck, Randy was launched forward in his seat. Then he bounced back. Originally, those broken shards of glass didn't cut him deep, but the hit caused the glass to pierce deeper into his skin. This scene scared everyone who was nearby, but people only thought it was an accident. No one knew it was done on purpose. The chauffeur wasn't injured by the broken glass. He was only slightly injured by the impact of hitting the truck in front of them. Luckily, both he and Randy were still conscious, so without delay, the chauffeur took out his phone and called Master Connors. Master Connors was worried when he heard the news, but he didn't know that it was a scheme. After all, the chauffeur claimed that the window suddenly exploded by itself. He didn't realize it could be done on purpose. Afterwards, the Connors family rushed to the hospital. They knew that Randy and the chauffeur would be taken there by an ambulance, so there was no need for them to go to the scene of the accident right now. They would just go straight to the hospital. Still, they also sent people to the accident scene to see what exactly had happened. Dad, was it really an accident, or was it done on purpose? Asked Master Connor's second oldest son. Although it seemed to be an accident, he didn't think it was. If the glass exploded, it could be an accident, but I suppose it could also have been done on purpose. We need to know more details before we come to a conclusion, remarked Master Connors. Most believed it was an accident. The crash happened right after they schemed against the Ortiz family, so they might wonder whether the Ortiz family had found out and taken revenge. But Master Connors didn't think they could find out so quickly. He which caused the accident. That's all we know, and we found nothing wrong with the car at the scene. So, we think it was probably just an accident. Since that seems to be the case, the Connors family accepted that result. Randy wasn't pushed out of the operating room until 1.5 hours had passed, and even then, he was also asleep under the effect of anesthetic. Randy's wife stayed to take care of him, while the others left. After the Connors family returned to their home, they got out of the car together. At this time, it was already 8 p.m., and the sun had gone down completely. Ava was waiting for them in the darkness. She summoned up some magical energy and hit Master Connors with a forceful blow. The next moment, he suddenly felt a lot of pain and passed out. In an instant, the Connors family fell into a panic, but they all believed that Master Connors merely fainted because of the stress of the evening. However, they still drove him to the hospital at once. After that, Ava went back to the Ortiz family's house. When she arrived back there, she followed Master Ortiz to his study for a private talk. She knew he would be worried, so the first thing she said was, "Don't worry, no one saw me." "What happened to Connors?" asked Master Ortiz. "It's not serious. He'll only be unconscious for a while," reported Ava. After all, Master Connors was old, so she was gentle on him. "Great," Master Ortiz replied with satisfaction. He supported Ava's plan to take revenge, but he still didn't want anyone to be killed. After the Connors family took Master Connors to the hospital, they didn't find anything wrong with his body, but he just couldn't wake up. The doctor could only tell them that Master Connors was under too much anxiety and pressure, so he passed out. In that case, the Connors family didn't need to be too worried. Before long, other major families heard the news that Master Connors fainted, but they all thought he was just under a lot of pressure, so no one gloated over it. In Paris, after Ariana, Carlos, and others arrived at the embassy and learned about the general situation, they had lunch. After their meal, they would go to meet the family that was keeping Carlotta in France. The diplomatic ambassador had made an appointment for them, and the meeting would begin at 2 p.m. that afternoon. This family was the Matisse family, and they were quite well known in Paris. Among the patriarch's children, there was a daughter who was married to the vice president, a daughter who was married to the heir of a noble family, and the son married the daughter of the richest family in the city. Therefore, the Matisse family had an extreme amount of influence in France. If they didn't, they wouldn't be so arrogant and deliberately go against the Ortiz family. They kept Carlotta in France because of what she did, but they asked Carlos to come and deal with it in person. That was a reasonable request, so the ambassador could do nothing about it. The Ortiz family knew that there must be a reason that the Matisse family schemed against them, however, and it couldn't just be because Carlotta accidentally injured one of their sons. Perhaps the Matisse family was colluding with a certain family in the United States. That was Ariana and the others' guess, because they didn't have the results of the full investigation yet, but they thought it was highly likely for that to be the truth. At 1 p.m., they headed out to meet the Matisse family. Along the way, Carlos couldn't calm down. In fact, except for Ariana and Zella, everyone was very nervous. Before they came here, Ariana and the others had a discussion about the situation. No matter what happened, Zella's job was to protect Carlos, while Ariana would deal with other things. Because it was obviously a scheme, the Matisse family would surely ask for something from Carlos. If Carlos didn't accept the deal they proposed, the Matisse family could secretly injure them. Ariana wasn't afraid of that, because she could cure them if they got hurt. But if the Matisse family wouldn't let them go safely, she wouldn't hesitate to teach them a lesson. The Matisse family had very high status in France, but they weren't the most powerful. Just like in the United States, there were many ambitious families of influence competing against each other for power. Therefore, if the Matisse family were in trouble, their opponents wouldn't miss the great opportunity to make the situation worse. When Ariana and the others arrived at the Matisse family's mansion, it was about 10 minutes until 2 p.m. A guard at the gate to deliberately watch the surveillance cameras at the corner of the room. She wasn't sure whether the Matisse family was watching them right now, but she guessed they could hear her if they were. If the Matisse family was watching them, they must want to know what they were talking about. Therefore, the person who was watching them must be fluent in English. Ariana's plan was to go rescue Carlotta if no one showed up within 5 minutes. If someone did show up, she would wait for a while longer. After all, it would cause unnecessary trouble if she went to rescue Carlotta before talking to the Matisse family. But she wouldn't hesitate to teach them a lesson if they dared to make them wait alone for too long. Ariana was right. Someone was indeed watching them through the surveillance cameras, and the Matisse family had decided to keep them waiting for a while. But when they heard Ariana's words, they didn't waste any more time and immediately went to meet them. About 4 minutes later, Jean-Claude, the eldest son of the Matisse family, came into the room, accompanied by his youngest son, Luis. They showed up with 8 servants, who were extremely skilled martial arts masters. After all, Carlos also